Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 3 The Burrow. Run! Breathed Harry, creeping to the window and pushing it up so they could talk through the burrs. Ron, how did you? What the? Harry's mouth fell open as the full impact of what he saw seeing hit him. Ron was leaning out of the back window of the art turquoise car, which was parked in midair. Grinning at Harry from the front seats were Fred and George, Ron's elder twin brothers. "All right, Harry," said George. "What's been going on?" said Ron. "Why haven't you been answering my letters? I've asked you to stay about 12 times, and then Dad came home and said you've got a physical warning for us using magic in front of muggles." "It wasn't me, and how did you know?" "He works for the ministry," said Ron. "You know we're not supposed to do spells outside school." "You should talk," said Harry, starting at the floating car. "Oh, this doesn't count," said Ron. "We're only borrowing this. It's that we didn't enchant it, but doing magic in front of those muggles you live with. I told you I didn't, but it will take too long to explain how now. Look, can you tell me at how it works that the Dursleys have locked me up and wouldn't let me come back, and obviously I can't magic myself out because the ministry will think that's the second spell I've done in 3 days, so stop griveling," said Ron. "We've come to take you home with us, but you can't use magic either." "We don't need to," said Ron, jerking his head toward the front seat and grinning. "You forgot who I've got with me." "Tie that around the bra," said Fred, throwing the end of a rope to Harry. "If the Dursleys wake up, I'm dead," said Harry, as he tied the rope tightly around a bar and Fred revved up the car. "Don't worry," said Fred, "and stand back." Harry moved back into the shadows next to Hedwig, who seemed to have realized how important this was and kept still in silence. The car revved louder and louder, and suddenly, with the crunching noise, the birds were pulled clean out of the window as Fred drove straight up in the air. Harry ran back to the window to see the birds dangling a few feet above the ground. Panting, Ron hoisted them up into the car. Harry listened anxiously, but there was no sound from the Dudley's bedroom. Then the birds were safely in the back seat with Ron. Fred reversed as close as possible to Harry's window. Get in," Ron said. "But oh, my hopper stuff, my wand, my broomstick, where is it?" "Locked in the cupboard under the stairs. I can't get out of this room." "No problem," said George from the passenger seat. "Out of the way, Harry." Fred and George climbing cat-like through the window into Harry's room. "You have to hand it to them, though, Harry," as George took an ordinary hairpin from his pocket and started to pick the lock. "A lot of wizard things is a waste of time knowing this sort of muggle tricks," said Fred, "but we feel like they're skills worth learning even if they are a bit slow." There was a small click and the door swung open. "So, well, get your trunk, you grab anything you need from your room and hand it out to Ron," whispered George. "Watch out for the bottom stair, it creaks." Harry whispered back as the twins disappeared onto the dark landing. Harry dashed around his room, collecting his things and passing them out of window to Ron. Then he went to help Fred and George have his trunk up the stairs. Harry heard Uncle Vernon cough. At last, panting, they reached the landing, then carried the trunk to Harry's room to open window. Fred climbed back into the car to pull with Ron, and Harry and George pushed from the bedroom side. Inch by inch, the trunk slid through the windows. Uncle Vernon coughed again. "A bit more," panted Fred, who was pulling from inside the car. One good push. Harry and George threw their shoulders against the trunk, and it slid out of window into the back seat of the car. "Okay, let's go," George whispered. But as Harry climbed onto the window sill, there came a sound loud crash from behind them, followed immediately by the thunder of Uncle Verner's voice. "That ruddy owl! I've forgotten Hedwig!" Harry tore back across the room as the landing light clicked on. He snatched up Hedwig's cage, dashed to the window, and passed it out to Ron. He was scrambling back onto the chest of doors when Uncle Vernon hammered on the unlocked door, and it crashed open. For a split second, Uncle Vernon stood framed in the doorway. Then he let out a bellow like an angry bull and dragged at Harry, grabbing him by the ankle. Ron, Fred, and George seized Harry's arm and pulled as hard as they could. "Petunia!" roared Uncle Vernon. "He's getting away! He's getting away!" But the Weasleys had a gigantic tug, and Harry's leg slid out of Uncle Vernon's grasp. Harry was in the car. He slammed the door shut. "Put your feet down, Fred," yelled Ron, and the car shot suddenly toward the moon. Harry couldn't believe it. He was free. He roared down the window, the night air whipping his head, and looked back at the shrinking rooftops of Private Drive. Uncle Vernon and Petunia and Dudley were all hanging, dumbstruck, out of Harry's window. "See you next summer," Harry yelled. The Weasleys swore with laughter, and Harry settled back in his seat, grinning from ear to ear. "Let Hedwig out," he told Ron. "She can fly behind us. She hasn't had a chance to strengthen her wings for ages." George handed the hairpin to Ron, and a moment later Hedwig soared joyfully out of the window to glide along them like ghosts. "So what's the story, Harry?" said Ron impatiently. "What's been happening?" Harry told them all about Dobby, the warning he'd given Harry, and fiasco of the violet pudding. There was a long, shocked silence when he had ended it. "Very fishy," said Fred finally. "Definitely doggy," agreed George. "So he wouldn't even tell you who's supposed to be plotting all this stuff?" "I don't think he could," said Harry. I told you, every time he got close to letting something slip, he started banging his head against the wall." He saw Fred and George look at each other. "Why'd you think he was lying to me?" said Harry. "Well," said Fred, put it this way, house elves have no powerful magic of their own, but they can usually use it without their master's permission. I reckon old Dobby was sent to stop you coming back to Hogwarts. Someone's idea of a joke. Can you think of anyone at school with a grudge against you? Yes, said Harry and Ron together instantly. Draco Malfoy, Harry explained. He hates me. Draco Malfoy, said George, turning around. Not Lucius Malfoy's son. Must be. It's not a common name, is it? Said Harry. Why, I've heard Dad talking about him, said George. He was a big supporter of you-know-who. And when you-know-who disappeared, said Fred, turning around to look at Harry. Lucius Malfoy came back, saying he'd never met any of it. Lot of dumb. Dad reckons he was right, in you-know-who inner circle. Harry had heard these rumors about Malfoy family before, and they didn't surprise him at all. Malfoy, just like Dudley, looked like a kind, thoughtful, and sensitive boy. I don't know whether the Malfoys own a house elf, said Harry. Well, whoever honors him, he will be an old wizarding family, and they'll be rich, said Fred. Yeah, Mom always wishing we had a house elf to do the iron thing, said George. But all we've got is a lousy old gull in the attic and gums all over the garden. House elves come with big old manors and castle and places like that. You don't catch on at our house. Harry was silent, judging by the fact that Draco Malfoy usually had the best of everything. His family was rolling in wizard gold. He could just see Malfoy stirring around a large manor house, sending this family's servant to stop Harry from going back to Hogwarts. Also sounded exactly like the sort of thing Malfoy would do. Had Harry been stupid to take Dobby seriously? I'm glad we came to get you anyway, said Ron. I was getting really worried when you didn't answer all my letters. I thought it was Errol's fault at first. Who's Errol? Our owl. He's ancient. It wouldn't be the first time he'd collapsed on a delivery. So then I tried to borrow Hermes, who the owl Mom and Dad wrote Percy when he has made perfect, said Fred from the front. But Percy wouldn't lend him to me, said Ron. Said he needed him. Percy's been acting very oddly this summer, said George, frowning, and he's been sending a lot of letters and spending a lot of time shut up in his room. Amen. There's only so many times can polish a perfect badge. You're driving too far west, Fred, he added, pointing at compass on the dashboard. Fred twiddled the steering wheel. So, does your dad know you've bought the car? Said Harry, guessing the answer. No, said Ron. He had to work tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to get it back in the garage without Mom noticing we flew it. What does your dad do at Ministry of Magic anyway? He works in the most boring department, said Ron. The misuse of Muggle artificts office.